Who
Tuesday.
knows?
Yeah, this I'm very excited about the support that we've received so far ever since we have our first launch episode on Thursday. When it comes to there we go. Here's the YouTube link. I want to get this tweeted out. When it comes to Tuesday, they usually when me and Jackie hook up. And if anyone know our show, anyone who follow what we usually discuss how much we hate the government. And so we couldn't have a better guest to have for the very first time to discuss this and why we feel like we are justified in that position than Graham Elwood, co-host with Lee Camp on you guys' show as well. So welcome to I think it was the history the American government secrets that you guys had on YouTube. Welcome to the show, Graham Elwood.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I do that show with Lee Camp called Government Secrets, and then I have my own YouTube show called The Political Vigilante, where Government Secrets. Lee and I have been doing this since last July. We just did our 36th episode, which I think drops today. And that series, we each pick one or two like full-on government secrets, things we didn't know. Usually one of us picks something that the other one doesn't really know. Sometimes we're both aware of it, but it's that podcast is really it's mind blowing when I do it because I'm just like, oh, dude, you just learn something like, oh man, America. The more you learn about it, the worse it gets. And if you kind of trust your government a little bit, I go listen to our back catalog of episodes and see what happens after that and see how you feel, because it's not only has this country been founded on genocide and slavery and taking indigenous people's land, but just structurally it has been set up to benefit the ruling elites. And I mean, I had to take a break for a while because each week I would just type in CIA operation and then pick a letter and one would pop up and there'd be some horrifying operation that the CIA did, usually in some other part of the world or even here in some cases, that you're just like, oh man, like at every turn. And we did a three-part on the JFK assassination, referencing this book, JFK and the Unspeakable, which is this highly sourced book that uses sworn statements, sworn depositions, Freedom of Information Act documents. And I thought I knew the conspiracies of the JFK assassination until Lee he read that book and went through that book, and we had to do a 3-part episode on it. And you're just like, oh, wow. Like Lee Harvey Oswald, there's clear evidence he worked for the CIA. And all this stuff that you're just like, the CIA and the military industrial complex just had a president assassinated. And that's one of the episodes I think that led to my show getting demonetized.
Yeah.
So it's like,
that's why I wasn't even excited when my YouTube page got monetized, because as soon as I put videos out, they demonetized me immediately. The first video that I had when I got monetized while I was covering how our police pretty much is a force of oppression that pretty much uplifts white supremacy. Come with live facts, detailed, just like the article I wrote on defund the police. They demonetized that. You can't talk about that. So that's kind of what we can expect as leftist content creators. And that's why I like your show, and that's why I like having a lot of people on. I always laugh because Jackie took over my show. She kind of won the crowd over. I don't have anyone that's on my right on my show. What I like to do, I like to educate ourselves about the history, like the CIA, where you talk about. I always say, if you don't know the history of the CIA, you don't know American history.
Yeah, for sure. Without a doubt. Really
or world history.
Oh, yeah, exactly. World history. I mean, pick a part of the world. They had their fingers in it, screwing it up. I mean, just name one, name a country. I can tell you somewhere near there where there, if not in that country, in the region where the CIA was doing something that they shouldn't have been doing. And, like you brought up the police thing. So this past episode we just did that's dropping today, we've done a 2-part on the 19 things. I think Lee is based on an article he wrote that you didn't know about the police department, which is they do something like 110 hours of training on using weapons of, hurting people, killing people, how to take people down, and only 8 hours of de-escalation. I mean, just stuff like that. just that alone, you learn about those statistics. Lee told me that they kill on average, since this has been, they've been tracking it since 2005. And again, this was an NBC News research. They kill on average 1,000 Americans a year. So you're talking about, since 2005, they've killed in the neighborhood of 15,000 people, and there have been three convictions. Like, that stat alone is like, I mean, and it really, when you get into it, like I say on my show, Political Vigilante, I say, follow the money, connect the dots, find the truth, man. When you really start uncovering stuff and what it's really about, it's very easy to see how they operate. They being those in power, the ruling elites. And what the police departments have always been used, as I'm sure you talked about on this show, started from, slavery, and the police departments are just sort of extensions of that, to also protect those in power. I mean, like, when have you seen the police shoot a billionaire in the back? When have the police put their knee on the neck of a billionaire? When has that happened? When have you ever seen a billionaire just get the crap beat out of them by 5 cops?
That's why the concept of defunding the police and holding them accountable, that's why it scares the capitalist class so much, because that's their only role, is to enforce racial hierarchies and to protect the capitalist class. So we've been telling people
not just the police, it's the military as well.
Absolutely.
Like, we always say, when we say like defund the police or abolish the police are just the domestic part. The military is the worldwide part, but it's the same operation.
Mm-hmm.
It's like getting rid of the left arm, but not the right. You gotta deal with both.
And that's why I discuss U.S. imperialism. That's why I think it's important to discuss that as well, because when we see the police brutality that happens at Black Lives Matter protests and how they treat protesters and how we see them literally commit war crimes on protesters, that's U.S. imperialism coming home, without a doubt. And I wrote a very comprehensive piece on why we should defund the police, because this is just my background as a libertarian socialist, as an anarchist. It's not government that justifies itself. I mean, I had extensive amount of historical references detailing exactly how the police always operated. And Grandma always dare people to point out a time where the police ever did what the liberal class believed they said they do. Because the liberals, to this day, they still pretend that the police are designed to protect and serve our community. Meanwhile, as you laid out, they kill us. Like you said, 1,000 police killings. And I tell people all the time, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I was just going to add 1,000 police killings a year just to make that clear, but go ahead.
Yeah.
Just so people who are watching this, who might not be on the same side that we get, they're like you say, the group of people that are always trying to defend the police. Hey, they're not perfect. But I'm like, no, they are designed to keep, systemic racism in place. They are designed to keep the class structure in place, without a doubt. And as you said, the stuff that it's so mind-boggling, but yet so simple once you uncover it. We'll watch, the news talking about, what's going on in Burma and these military, the military coup has taken over the country and they're killing people every day. And it's like this, and it's awful. And the news always reports on it like it's this, miscarriage of justice. There's no democracy there. And yet when they cover our military in other countries doing stuff like this, our CIA doing stuff like this, or more importantly, when our police departments are doing this, they always justify. It's always different and justifiable. So I'm like, so if you're showing me Burma as this like egregious trampling of democracy and people's rights, as well it is, how is what our police department do on a daily, how is that any different? Like, explain. And they won't because they can't. They're funded to not do that.
Our police is as I mentioned before, just another way where they can impose white supremacy and racial hierarchies. We discuss all the police killings, and I tell people all the time, this is why I consider Joe Biden and anyone who's sympathetic to the police fascist system that we live in, they are my biggest threat. They are white supremacy in a nutshell. And if you are supportive of giant police budgets in our fascist police system, like our current president Joe Biden is, you are the white supremacist. So I can tell you just personally, as a black man, I don't fear the random white supremacists. Like some like liberals, they think some guy with Nazi tattoos, like that represents white supremacy. And I always tell people the real white supremacy, and this is what we talk about in the black community all the time, is the man, the guy in the suit who legislates against our community. And that's what we see the police now. I mean, we saw they just now legalized marijuana in New York. They had statistics that show 95% of the arrests were people of color for marijuana. That because of broken windows policing. That's where they go after disenfranchised communities. It's by design, and that's why I want people to understand.
Yeah, and there's so many examples of this. I mean, going back to the budgetary standpoint of this, like you look at Los Angeles, the Los Angeles Police Department gets 54% of the city's operating budget. The second largest city in the United States gives the police department $3.1 billion a year. And yet we have tent cities. We have massive high rises with really high end $4,000-$5,000 one bedroom apartments or condos or whatever. And we can't seem to figure out the whole homeless problem,
which is just growing after the pandemic.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's almost doubled is the number that I've heard. And if you live in Southern California, I defy anybody to drive longer than a mile before they see a tent city somewhere. I mean, anywhere in LA, you can't go a mile without seeing something, at least a handful underneath a bridge or something. And so again, it's that same policy of, what if we, and going back to defund the police. So we should be spending more money on programs, housing first, as they did in Finland, which had an 80% success rate. They put it in Utah. It had like a 90% success rate and they got rid of it. It's of course, because we can't have too good of an idea in this country. And then the same thing domestically, we spend, look what China is doing around the world, specifically most notably this recent deal with Iran, $400 billion deal. That's infrastructure. They're giving Iran all of this stuff, and then in turn they're gonna get oil. What's our solution? Sanction, which is an act of warfare. We've been sanctioning Iran and Venezuela and a handful of other nations during the pandemic, which only exacerbates the pandemic. And then we are also we need war. I mean, we are addicted. This country is addicted to war, just like it's addicted to militarized police. It's addicted to we have the highest prison population. I mean, it's just like when I see the news do these stories about all these authoritarian governments all over the country, like what country do they think they live in? Like, I mean, and then there's and I'll say something like, why are we criticizing China? And we'll go, well, China does this, this, and this. I say, okay, great, but we're doing it worse. I mean, and then you look at, what's happening in our own country. It's I'm sorry. Well, Russia and China are enemies. Is Chauvin was when he put his knee on? Was he with the Chinese army? Did Putin put him there? No, he did not. Did China contaminate the water in Flint, Michigan? Oh no, corporations did and bought out the governments and whatever. Michigan's a blue state, so the Democrats are corrupt in that state. What just happened in Texas? Was that China who screwed up their energy grid? No, it was a corrupt system that they're run by Republican oil guys. It's just like
it was clearly Russia, Graham. Come on.
Oh yeah, right. Well, it was cold weather, so Russia brought in the cold weather and froze everybody.
There you go.
That's evidence. There it is. So, and I share your the sort of rank and file, just racist white guy who's in a militia or whatever. Some of them are scary and they got guns, but they don't have as much say or power as the legislators who allow this to happen, or
Yes.
I think I'm almost more furious at like the neoliberals that consistently defend the horrific Democratic Party and do this lesser of two evils crap. It's just like Joe Biden wrote the 94 crime bill. Kamala Harris put 100,000 black men behind bars. And yet we're all supposed to do backflips when they beat Trump. Okay, great. Trump's gone. But we replaced the overt fascism of Trump and the Republicans with the rainbow flag wrapped fascism of Biden and Harris. I just like,
to me, the covert is more dangerous because they do it in secret and you don't see it coming. To me, I always said Biden was far more dangerous than Trump because the media was so far up Trump's ass. We knew everything he was thinking of doing, but they are completely laying down for Biden, and we don't find out until after the fact, if we find out at all. So that's just my take on it. But yeah, go ahead.
That's 100% accurate. Because look, I mean, we're already seeing it. So when Trump was putting kids in cages, everyone was outraged. They happened to forget those cages were built under Obama and Biden. But now we're already, like you just said, we're already calling them facilities. Like it's like he's not letting the media in, and finally let the media in. And it's already, and then you even have AOC saying, oh, it's bad what's happening, but we're not ripping kids out of the arms of like we did under Trump. And it's like, there's evidence to show that that's incorrect. In the media, that you're right. The covert is more dangerous. The guy with the Klan outfit or the I know that guy's a problem. I see him. He's telling me, like, at least I know who he is. But the covert stuff, they're shaking your hands and they're even putting in, the diversity of the ruling class and make us go, well, the identity politics makes everybody, or liberals at least, go, oh, we did it. We fixed it. We have a first, Janet Yellen, first woman head of the Fed. No, the whole banking cartel is corrupt. Like there's no, and the media then spoon feeds this covert without asking any real correct, without the same outrage. Like
I was hoping that once Biden beat Donald Trump, that we would have the liberals that would go sleep and get out of our way. But actually worse than that. Instead of going to sleep, they are now playing defense for the same things that they were outraged about Donald Trump. And me and Jackie on my show, we warned people about this a long time ago. And I said we had no win condition in this general election. No matter who wins, we are going to be screwed. We got to focus on the local level to make change in our real community. That was my take. Because no matter who won, the people that are actually in a disenfranchised community, they are screwed. And you brought up AOC because AOC, she was popping off when Donald Trump was doing things like bombing Syria, when he wanted to build a border wall. I just saw this story that just broke before we got on. I mean, there's discussion now of Joe Biden wanting to continue to fix Donald Trump's border wall. Now, the same people who was up in arms with Trump when he was doing that, now they're dead silent. I mean, AOC haven't tweeted in 3 days. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that we warned about, and now it's going to be hard to oppose someone who is just like Donald Trump, same temperament, but he got media complicity on his side.
And his tweets.
Did we forget that the wall started under Democrats, or we're not allowed to talk about that?
Yep.
No, you're not. You're not allowed to talk about that. That's a hate crime, Jackie.
Yep.
I'm sorry. You can't say that.
Okay, that was violence on my part. I apologize.
That's the thing it's so maddening that we literally like aren't like when you say that and then too, the other point that you just made that it's worse because they're not going to sleep. They're defending it.
Yep.
Like I put up a post in March saying Joe Biden is bombing Syria, but we haven't even gotten our stimulus checks yet. And then people were defending him. Hey, Graham, he had to. It was Iran-backed rebels. And I'm like, who told you? What evidence do you have that it was Iran-backed rebels? You just heard that on CNN, and so you just bought it? And now you're defending war when a Democrat does it? Which is more dangerous. And it's like there was a really healthy anti-war movement in this country when after 9/11, when Bush was lying about weapons of mass destruction, was ramping us into war with Iraq. There was a big, loud anti-war movement. And then they went to sleep. When a Democrat got in the office, they went to sleep. And, they're so now they aren't going to sleep, but they're just vocally defending this as well, at least, but Trump was, and it's just like, that's how they start every argument is, yeah, but Trump.
Exactly.
And you're just like, they don't want to look at the big picture, and they've all been propagandized, and they think they're so much more woke than the like Fox News viewing, red state voter. And I'm like, how are you any different? They're no different.
That's what's the most insufferable to me. It's that they have the nerve to have a moral high horse when really all they're really saying is, I don't want to have to think about this. I want to go back to brunch. And if you make me realize that the Democrats are just as bad as the Republicans, I might, because of my pious stance, I might actually have to do something about it, and I'm not going to do anything about it. So I'm going to fight you word for word so that you'll just shut up and I can go back to brunch. Because the Democrat's in office now, so obviously that means everything's fine. And despite the fact that we put in the same Democrat that created the conditions that gave us Trump, obviously that can't happen again. Like, we're good. Like, let us go back to brunch.
That's such a great point, Jackie. At their core, they really don't want to do anything about it.
Yeah.
At their core, they really don't want to fix the system, because it's easier to just go, oh, the bad group over there, the Republicans or whatever. It's easier. And I mean, it's the same thing on the far right voters. They just want to say the Democrats are bad, and they don't want to look at how the Republican Party has screwed over working class people. They just don't. Americans are so fed such nonsense that they just can't. They don't want to do it, and they really don't. Americans, I've always said this, Americans don't want to know how the sausage is made, and when you tell them how it's made, they get mad at you.
Yeah. They shoot the messenger.
Yeah, they shoot the messenger. They're mad at you. How dare you tell me that this delicious hamburger is actually bloody murder? Then they're not going to change their. Some people go, oh, that's gross, I'm going to become a vegetarian, in keeping with this analogy. But most people are going to get mad that you brought that up. And so I don't know. I mean, I will say this. There are more people flat out like this show. You're calling yourself Fred Hampton's leftist, which is just like awesome. And more people are just coming out and saying it than I've heard in my lifetime. Now, I mean, I'm 51, but like nobody was openly calling themselves a socialist 20, 30 years ago. Nobody.
The most independence of all time is now being tracked right now. So we're seeing a record amount of people reject the two-party duopoly. I mean, we even see now, I mean, people are just feel like they have no other choice. So that's why they feel like they had to vote for a lesser two evil. But if you ask and talk to people, they don't like the two-party system. They don't like the Democrats. They don't like the Republicans. Partisanship makes my skin crawl. And that's why it really upsets me when I see people that I used to respect. I mean, I was sounding the alarms when I saw how the liberal class was covering Trump, because I was very critical about Trump the same way I am about Biden, but about the substantive things he was things he campaigned on, like fighting against trade, ending the wars, but he never did with none of those things. But the liberal class was silent about those things. And now I was warning them about when neoliberals take control, because they were silent on those things because they actually approve and they don't want to set themselves in the corner later. So I'm upset because we have Bernie Sanders. He introduced a resolution to end the support of the genocide in Yemen. And now Joe Biden is expanding that under his watch. So instead of apologizing for Joe Biden, pretending that he's someone he's not, this is something you should be hitting on him every day. But now we're seeing even the most progressive politicians are falling for this partisanship. And it makes me sick, man.
You cannot.
I mean, let's be fair. You can't pin something on somebody who can't remember his wife's name. Just saying.
That's a very valid point. And yeah, this is the problem with the duopoly, is you cannot reform in either of these parties, but the Democratic Party, this notion that you can reform the party from within. I mean, Bernie and AOC and the Squad are such fine examples of like, maybe they tried, maybe they had good intentions. I was a fan of them, and but at the end of the day, they will acquiesce to the power of the Democratic establishment, as would anybody within the Republican Party. Will have to acquiesce to that. They just have no choice. And I think was brought up earlier, focusing on local politics is the key, because that's where real change is happening. And you're seeing where all these like little victories are popping up, in, local, I mean, even just Florida getting $15 an hour minimum wage, or I think it was Mississippi that, legalized marijuana. You've got Evanston, Illinois doing reparations, and you can go into the specifics of those bills and say that there's some problems here or there, which that's fine. That's a fine thing to bring up. But I think that's what it's going to take, because and as you brought up, they didn't want the things that Trump should have been held accountable on. He said he was going to end these wars. He said he was going to make the economy better. He didn't do those things. The Democrats can't call him out on those failures because those are populist failures. Those are populist promises. And then they're going to go, well, what are your populist promises? What are your populist plans? Because populism goes against the ruling elites, and the ruling elites control both parties and all the media. So, and everything. I mean, they control the courts, they control just about everything. So, this is where like the circumventing of the two parties is big in local elections. And because what unfortunately is going to happen if Biden doesn't really fix people's lives for the better, like, and this last stimulus bill, they're like, we bringing people out of poverty. No, you didn't. There was no $15 an hour minimum wage. There was no student debt forgiveness. There was no Medicare for all. It's a one-time.
See how media did propaganda for him, right?
Yeah.
They didn't run those stories when Trump did his package, but soon Biden did his. Oh, we're gonna fix poverty, even though it wasn't true. it was nuts.
It's nuts. And they're all doing propaganda for him. This is
they also fudged the numbers on that too.
Of course, Of course they did. They did,
And it's like, because they used that when they, after the COVID bill, the relief came, they used the same numbers that they had before, but they cut everything and means tested it. So those numbers no longer applied, but they were still touting it as if they were the same numbers and saying, see, we cut poverty in half, except for the fact that we didn't.
Yeah. And even if, first of all, you got to have a kid to get that tax break. So if you don't have a kid, you don't get the tax breaks. And it's only a one-time tax break. It's not a permanent one. They might make it permanent, but right now it's not. $15 an hour would drastically change millions of Americans' lives for the better. Student debt forgiveness would infuse trillions of dollars back into the economy. Medicare for all would be the most life-changing thing. And 20 years from now, people would be praising Joe Biden for that, and rightfully so. But he's not going to do that because he's bought and paid for by the big pharmaceutical companies and all that. And what the Democrats, and this is again the one of the many, bear traps of this duopoly. So if they're just going to put this, these kicking the financial can down the road, the financial collapse is starting. I mean, like it is. I was watching the Kaiser report, and this was a story also in CNN that I just retweeted. This big hedge fund just lost billions of dollars by all this debt stuff. And it looks exactly like what was leading up in 2007 and 2008 to that crisis. You also have, I just did a story on it on Political Vigilante, FHA, which is just one lender in America, has a national average of 17.5% of homes that are on the brink of foreclosure. They're just one lender. And in certain markets, it's at between 20 to 25%. So when all this economy, they keep kicking this can down the road, right? They didn't do rent relief. They didn't do mortgage relief. They just said, we're going to extend, you can't get evicted. We're going to extend the forbearance. And they're printing all this money. So there's going to be hyperinflation. The economy is going to collapse. And you know what's going to happen? A worse Trump's going to pop up that the Republicans are going to regurgitate up. And it'll be like, people like, that'll never be worse. Nobody thought, oh, George W. Bush. Everyone on the left was like, oh, no one will ever be worse than him. And now, oh, he's cuddly everybody's friend. He's Michelle Obama's friend. He's Ellen's friend. Isn't he cuddly cute? Well, let me tell you something. Trump was an idiot. He was just dumb, a dumb narcissist. He was in position to stage a real coup after the election in November. And we could be in the middle of a civil war right now. But he was just too dumb to even think that way. He didn't even use January 6th. If you just from like a historical status, like military tactical position, what dictators have done throughout history, it was lining up for him to do that, but he didn't have the brain power. He was just like, I'm Trump, I'm number one. I say everything's great. That's all he knew how to do, right? And then go to Wendy's or whatever. Imagine, if you will, a charismatic Mike Pence.
Yep.
An evangelical.
Don't do that.
Yeah, it's a horrifying nightmare.
Josh Hawley is already trying to clean up Trump rhetoric, and when they had the GOP National Convention, or I think, or some sort of speaking event where Trump was speaking at, Josh Hawley did his speak, and I don't agree with what Josh Hawley says, but it's clear to me that what he's trying to do is take Trumpism and polish it up and make it more appealing, and he's trying to do it in a more charismatic way. But I always tell people about Trump. Trump was just a fraud who wanted to be part of the club. I never understood people on the left that gave him more benefit of doubt than I believe he deserved. Because once again, people always pretend he was anti-war, but he was not. I mean, I love that you brought that sanctions are an act of war. How can anyone pretend that Donald Trump is anti-imperialist when he was ramping up sanctions in states like Venezuela? I mean, in states like Iran as well. So Trump, this is how I would hit people on the right who would support him. I would do it in a populist way, where he said he always hit Hillary Clinton on her ties to Saudi Arabia with the Clinton Foundation. But then he got in, he took donation for his hotel, and again with giant weapons deal, funding the genocide for him. So I'll hit him on hardcore critiques just like that. How he attacked Wall Street. He attacked Hillary all the time on Wall Street, but then he got in office, and then he hired a whole bunch of Goldman Sachs goons. So he was an obvious fraud, and that always why I wanted people to know about Trump. But it's just more the same with Biden, because the same swamp that Biden that Joe Biden let in, it's the same government forces that want U.S. imperialism to go on, that want to have the coup in Venezuela to go on. So that's why I predicted all the stuff that was going to happen. People thought I was being delusional, but I said early on that I don't think Biden's going to end the support of the genocide in Yemen. I didn't think he was going to get out of the Iran deal like he said he was going to do. There was a story I'm going to cover here very soon. He's playing games. Iran, they said the only condition is ease sanctions. And when Joe Biden ran, he did not say we're going to negotiate with Iran. He said we're going to get back in the Iran deal, period. But just like Chomsky said, his foreign policy is just like Trump. But unlike Trump, he got a whole media class protecting him. That would make him dangerous.
Dude, with Biden, he's just a better politician. I've said the same thing that Graham has, that basically Trump just lucked into fascism, whereas Biden is fascist by design. And he gets away with it because he's a better politician, so he's a smoother talker. Jude commented, the COVID bill may have been crumbs, but there were 49, one non-voted Republican, that said, get effed, you don't even deserve that. What you're forgetting is that that's after the Democrats dropped the ball when the Republicans came to the part. They came with anything and everything before the election. And the Democrats decided to play politics with your money. And they said, no, we're not going to do anything in the hopes that you guys lose so that we get power. And then we'll give you whatever crumbs we decide to give you. Don't forget that part. Okay, just wanted to say that real quick, because everybody act like I hate this. Republicans bad, Democrats bad. They're all bad.
Right. Yes.
Okay,
yes.
I'm sorry, but they are. Nobody is looking out for you. Just throwing it out there.
Nobody. That's the thing. I really hope, and unfortunately, I hope Americans wake up. Unfortunately, I think it's going to be a massive economic collapse for them to really start waking up. Unfortunately, I hope that isn't the case. But when Americans, and it's, and especially I have more hope for younger people, because unfortunately, too many people, my age and up, mid 40s and up, grew up watching traditional media. And so they still think that that's where the truth is. And I'm hoping that people like under 40, especially under 30, are like, they didn't, sit down and watch the evening news. They've always gotten their news sources elsewhere. So the realities are the realities. I mean, you can just sit there and, people are just going to see they're getting screwed over. I mean, that, and look, part of what Trump appealed to, again, he ran a populist campaign. Yes, it was racist. Yes, it was xenophobic. Yes, it was sexist. But he still said, hey, you've been abandoned by the system. You lost your job. The American dream is no longer available to you. I'm going to come in and give it to you. Obviously, it's not true, as we've pointed out. He didn't do those things, but that the antidote to this whatever charismatic Pence nightmare that the Republicans are brewing up will be a real populist, an FDR style populist, like somebody like Bernie that's younger, that's not operating within the Democratic Party. Because you cannot, if somebody says like, I'd love to see Nina Turner win, and I know she has to run as a Democrat. There's no People's Party there, but at the minute, if she does win and stays in the Democratic Party, then it's like, there's no hope. If she ship for the People's Party, then there's like, that's real. That's a real defection. That could really give that party some steam. That party I know is new, and it's got a lot of, it's a new party. It doesn't have billions of dollars and an infrastructure in place, but it's going to take somebody like that to run outside of these two parties that can actually unify the working class people of all ethnicities across this country, because they want us divided, distracted, and afraid. They want us fighting with each other, red state, blue state, black, white, male, female, whatever. They need that, because if we all got together, it's over. It's over.
We should be in the streets.
I know.
I'm very upset. And I said after Biden won, I want to see people stay in the streets like there was in the summer. And I'm very upset that people are not in the streets the way we was during the last summer, because there are plenty we can protest on. And the reason why I don't get caught up in a two-party duopoly nonsense, because my issue with the United States is the state itself. It's not the party, it's the state and how it's operated. We live in a fascist police system that won't change no matter who's actually elected. I mean, even during the campaign, Joe Biden was running to the right on Trump, on what law enforcement. He was saying during the debates, I want to fund the police more. I'm actually tougher on crime than Trump. Trump is actually weak on crime. And now we see how Joe Biden actually going to operate when he's in government. Because thank God we were saved by the courts. The right-wing courts save us. This is how unhinged Joe Biden is. Joe Biden and his administration try to lobby against our Fourth Amendment rights because he tried to get them to rule in favor of the police able to disarm people and steal their guns without a warrant. Now, this is what they do. The establishment, they always say, we got to do these things to fight terrorism, to fight white supremacy. But then they have a government power grab where they give the state more rights and more powers, and they say we're going to use that to fight racism, and then they use that to turn that on protesters and left-wing movements. So when you see this ruling, thank God that they wasn't successful in this. But if they was able to get that passed, that would be targeted towards black people, because that's how it works. That definitely would be a ruling used to disarm the black working class, and this is something that the liberal class don't even consider. And that's why I just bring up this case, because that's just another example of Joe Biden and the Democratic Party working with the state to strip our rights away. Joe Biden is to the right of Republicans on healthcare. I think the public option is trash, but the public option got 54% support with the Republican Party, and Joe Biden doesn't support that. So when I say that Joe Biden is not a centrist, when I say he's an unhinged right winger, I will bring up the facts when it comes to that. And if you want to defend this, because I actually covered the Fourth Amendment as well, I cover all these civil rights and state violence. And Brett Kavanaugh surprised me, because the Supreme Court ruled recently to expand the Fourth Amendment, because what the police always does, and this is how they harass protesters, this is how they will get away with a lot of the police brutality incidents. When they get protesters, they say, oh, we had them detained, but they're not actually charging them with anything. So what they ruled in favor of, and this is what Brett Kavanaugh sided with, they said in order for, you cannot have police engagement without them actually having something to charge you with, or without them actually detaining you. So that's just something that the Supreme Court ruled against. Biden administration was against this. So I'm bringing this up because I want you guys to understand that it's a state problem, not a Republican versus Democrat problem.
Yeah, and it's who controls the state is really if you really want to get to the head of the snake. I actually got to go here in a few minutes, but absolutely. That's who is pushing that. Who really benefits from that, in the same way that the military industrial complex, as we've discussed, the foreign policy with our military, the domestic policy with our police are very similar for the same reasons. A lot of it is money. We need to be tough on crime because the private prison industry makes a lot of money. That's why we have the highest population of prisoners of any country in the world. In the same way, the military industrial complex, like, oh, they always need some bad guy. It's like a year ago in February, they signed the Duma agreement, the peace talks between the United States and the Taliban and the Afghan government, right? With the agreement, we're going to be out by May 1st. So CNN just ran an article about the defense contractors might sue the American government because they were still given contracts even after that agreement was signed, knowing full well we're supposed to be out by May 1st. And then Joe Biden goes, wow, well, I can't see us being in Afghanistan next year. But that's just more vague going, and it's the same thing. And it's like, and they use the same tactic. If we pull out of Afghanistan too soon, we've been there 20 years, then terrorism's going to flourish. If we defund the police, then just criminals are going to run wild on the streets and everything's going to be chaos. They use the same scare tactic because it's the same money. It's the private prison industry, the military industrial complex. Looks, we know police departments across America buy military grade weapons. So that's police departments are another customer. So they profit from this. They don't profit from ending poverty. They need people in poverty so that people are uprising and there's crimes and they can arrest people, and they need that. They need that for their prisons. They need that to sell their military grade weapons, just like we need enemies in the Middle East. Iran, ISIS, blah, blah, even though we've worked with ISIS in Syria, we've worked with ISIS and Al Qaeda just because, and it's all about money. It's not about terrorism. It's about oil revenues. It's about pipelines. It's about the petrodollar. So I hope, I'm glad you guys are doing this show, and I hope people are waking up to what this is really about. The 1%, the ruling elites. There's about 4,000 billionaires on the planet. They control everything, and most of them are awful people, and they've kept systemic racism in there. And they do sex trafficking and arms deals, and just they're horrible, soulless motherfuckers. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. They're the fucking worst people, man, and they control everything.
The truth.
And it trickles down.
Yep. Keep preaching the truth, Graham. Thank you for coming on show again. This is exactly why we brought you on, because this is what me and Jackie like to do. We like to explain to people why we dislike the state. I mean, when you hear the show, there's nothing that you can call conspiracy theory that we said. Anything that we say you can back up. So I don't understand how anyone can believe that I'm out of line with our political beliefs. That's why I thank you for coming on the show and preaching the truth, Graham. Where can they find you?
So you can go to GrahamElwood.com. That's where you see my show. It's on YouTube, even though I've been demonetized. I'm also on Rockfin, rockfin.com/GrahamElwood. But if you go to GrahamElwood.com, you can follow me on social media. You can subscribe. I go live about 4 or 5 days a week. I'm actually going to go live later today. And I talk about stuff like this, and it's all facts. It's not conspiracy. And I really appreciate what you're doing, because I just learned about Fred Hampton about 3 years ago, and I grew up in Chicago, and that infuriates me that a guy like that has been deliberately kept quiet. We don't know who he is on a mass scale, just like we don't know MLK's socialist speeches. We only know, I have a dream, great speech, but why aren't we hearing all his speeches? So the fact that your show is Fred Hampton's leftist, and you're getting that out there, and particularly like in the Black community and waking people in the Black community up to that, it's big, man. Like what Fred Hampton's doing, it's huge what you're doing. And so happy to come on the show whenever.
We appreciate it, man. Thank you so much, Graham.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Take care, man.
Later.
So, Jackie, you still there? Let's get their Twitter and all the information in the chat. I think they can hear me. Can you guys hear me? I don't know if you guys can hear Jackie. We can't hear you, Jackie. I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation that we had with Graham. Well, so we can talk about how corrupt our state is all day. Next week, I think we're scheduled to have Lee Camp on, I believe. So I'm very excited for that episode as well. They can hear me, but they can't hear Jackie. Josh, you're saying that you can't hear the interview. Sorry, you missed the interview. We will have the replay on my on the channel as well. So we see we see we can get Jackie situated. But Graham Elwood, I appreciate him because anyone who covers state violence, foreign policy, and willing to call out the two-party duopoly for what it is, I have a lot of respect for. And I'm very excited about what we're doing here because our main thing is we want to, just like Graham said at the end, we want people to understand that there is a black left voice that have been muted for a very, very long time. So if you enjoy that conversation, you want more of these, I think I can hear you now, Jackie. Please subscribe. Check us out because once again, we upload daily. So Jackie's back. They were saying Nick trying to silence you.
You wasn't me that time.
It was me. It's Meganator and Rocky Flame always causing trouble. So that was a good time.
So what I was saying was I have a little bit of pushback on what Graham said when he said Nina had to join as a Democrat because she could have joined as an independent. Ross Perot ran as independent and he managed to somewhat split the vote. But I mean, honestly, I think Bernie should have run as an independent. When the minute he saw that the Democratic Party was not going to let him win, he should have dropped out as a Democrat and run as an independent. He is an independent in Congress. She's just running for Congress. She's not running for president. There's no reason she couldn't run as an independent. That way she's not beholden to the Democratic Party. But that's just my opinion. And because to me, the moment you choose one of the teams, you've already lost the game. If you decide to become either a Democrat or Republican, you are already complicit in the system. But that's just my opinion. Hi, Meg. Thanks, everyone.
Nina Turner apparently killing game, so she won't need our support who support third parties. I mean, I think she raised like 1.6 million first quarter. I saw.
But that's exactly it. Like she already has a backing. She didn't need the Democratic Party.
Yeah, that's a good point.
She could have gone independent. Like she was Bernie Sanders' #1 person both times. Everybody knows who she is. She could easily have run as an independent. And like you said at the start of the show, there are more independents than Democrats or Republicans because people don't like both parties. So take advantage of that. Become an independent. Just saying, if there's any hope for a third party to take over, it is independents because they have been established.
Yep, and that's why I think if anyone's gonna be focused on electoral politics, I know you mostly preach direct action and general strikes and that kind of stuff. You gotta at least be an advocate, ranked choice vote, and that's something that I think that the left should be focused on because they want to talk about the other policies. The same way we have push for force to vote, I think we should have something similar for ranked choice voting because despite the fact
we're never gonna get it. That's why we're never going to get it. That's why I'm like, you're right. I am against electoral politics because just like Graham was saying, the people in charge are going to keep their foot on your neck. Ranked choice voting is allowing that to ease up. They're not going to let you have it because then you might actually get rid of the duopoly, which is how they keep their foot on your neck. They're not going to let us have that. Like, we can try all we want, just like we tried really hard twice for Bernie. And the Democrats were like, no, we're not going to let this happen. The same thing is going to happen. You'll get ranked choice voting in a couple states here and there. You're not going to get it national. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, that what we love to do, because we want to create a coalition of states that would that could overturn the electoral process. I mean, it'd be pretty goddamn hard. But I think that's the only direction that we should be going in, when it comes down to electoral politics. And I think direct ballot initiatives, that's probably our only chance. But there've been stories that have been popping up for the last few weeks all over the country, how you have Republicans and Democrats teaming up to stop some of these initiatives. So Missouri, we had a ballot initiative to expand Medicare, and now there's a lot of Republicans who want to overturn that, and they have the government had the power to do that. So if we actually was ever in a position where we can actually get something like ranked choice voting and challenge a duopoly, would they just overturn it and render all our efforts useless? Most likely.
Yes.
But that's
100%.
the rallying. Yeah, that's the rallying call for the general strike when something like that happens. But unfortunately, we are pacified as hell. Unfortunately,
that's why, to me, I think our immediate steps, like, I understand that you're focused on the local level of politics. I'm 100% done with politics because, again, like, you can make small changes on the local level, but the changes that really need to be made, specifically like environmental, the large scale changes that have to happen immediately, those are not going to be allowed to happen without a general strike. So for me, the thing that we need to be doing right now is building up mutual aid networks, because that's the first step in a general strike. Once we can get enough mutual aid, then people can actually afford to not go to work and to protest not buying something. Like, right now, why do so many people use Amazon and Walmart? Because they have the cheapest products. When you're broke, you buy the cheapest products. You don't care about the politics. You just need the thing, and you can afford it from one of those two places. So that's where you get it. And that's the monopoly. That's the stranglehold that those companies have. That's why they're so popular. If we can have mutual aid, then we can tell people, hey, we got you. Don't go to work. Strike. And we can tell people, hey, you need this thing? Don't buy it from Amazon. Don't buy it from Walmart. We're going to prop up these mom and pop businesses so that you can buy it from them. Or maybe we'll help you be able to afford to buy the mom and pop businesses. Because that's the thing. Walmart's business model was to drive, they come into a town where there are a bunch of mom and pop businesses that have a bunch of different specialties. They come in, they drive down the rates of everything to the point where local companies can't compete. They can't, through their distribution, through their just the operating cost, they can't possibly keep Walmart. Walmart usually comes in the first couple of years and operates at a loss because they sell things so cheap. And then they drive out all the local businesses, and then they can raise up the rates a little bit so that now they make enough money because they have no competition. Yep. So they're a monopoly without being a monopoly. And the same thing with Amazon. Amazon is where you go to buy things the cheapest online. Walmart's where you go to buy things the cheapest in person. And we can't tell people don't shop there when the alternative is the exact same things you need are more expensive, but you're not even making a living wage.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry that you need to buy your fruit from someplace. It's cheaper to buy fruit from Walmart than the local shop, even the grocery store, because it is cheaper to buy fruit from Walmart than the grocery store, even though it tastes like ass. But if you have like $10 to get groceries, you're going to go where that $10 can stretch. So I don't blame people for going there. I don't blame people for working there, because you work where you get hired. Yeah. And so I think the first thing we need to do is set up mutual aid. That's the first step in a general strike. And then you can tell people, hey, then you organize and you say, hey, we're going to stop patroning Walmart. We're going to stop patroning Amazon. We're going to stop going to work. You can do, and here's the thing, like I was talking about this with Ashley and Monica, you can't do like nobody shop on this day. No.
Yeah,
It's
that
got
makes
to
no sense
be,
to
you
me.
got to go back to the civil rights movement. And it's like, we're going to shut this shit down until you decide to meet our demands. It's not like, oh, there's no shopping on the day after Thanksgiving. No, it's, we're not shopping here until you pay your people and until you pressure the lawmakers to change the laws in favor of workers. Until you do that, you're about to go broke.
Yeah, the one
Nobody's
they said.
getting a bonus this year. We're just, you're going to shut this shit down. It has to be nationwide because now companies are global. So it has to be all around. It should be all around the world, but it has to be at least all around the United States. Because if they do that, like Tesla's a prime example of this. During the pandemic, California was like, it's not safe. You can't open your factories. So then Musk was like, well, I'll go to Texas. That's why it's got to be statewide, or it's got to be nationwide, because billionaires will do that. Billionaires will just be like, well, if New York is actually for the workers, then I'll just go to Ohio.
Yeah.
So it's got to be everywhere. It's like, no, we will not, nobody will spend a dime until you do this.
Yeah, that's the only way it'll be effective. And that's why I never understood the one day thing either, because it's like these giant corporations, they'll wipe their ass with one day. If anything, they'll lay off some lower level staff. I mean, that it never makes sense to me, but I'm like, I guess they know what they're doing. But you got to have a sustained level of economic pressure. And I saw angry progressive in the chat here because we endorse mutual aid at the Fred Hampton leftist network because unlike the neoliberals, we don't have endless supply of resources. I mean, if you're balling and you want to spend your money in a lot of different ways, I'm not gonna fight you. But if you're one of the people that want to give to a cause and you're on a tight budget, can you really justify spending that money on the Democratic Party where apparently a lot of progressive politicians are funneling money to corporate Democrats that are against Medicare for all, apparently. But is that really a smart way of spending your resources? Or is it engaging in mutual aid? And when Nina decides to run a Democrat, I understand that she's making a political calculation. So wherever she thinks it's the best for her to win, but people need to understand that she's not owed support. Like if you're a Democrat and someone opts not to support you, you gotta expect that because at the end of the day, you're gotta be subservient to a warmongering, trickle down economic corrupt party. So I agree 100% with that. Let's see what else the comments were saying. I know we had quite a few that was missing out here. I'm pretty sure the
Somebody
reason.
just
Go ahead.
mentioned, I lost the comment because so many people have been talking, but somebody just brought up the fact that, like, they said they agree with me on like Walmart and general strike and everything, but we don't need to abandon electoral politics because that's what they want. They want fewer people to vote. Did I just lose Nick? I feel like I just lost Nick. Can you guys still hear me? Because I don't see Nick anymore. Anywho, so my response to that is I am not discouraging anyone from voting. I'm telling you my personal thoughts on electoral politics. Okay. I don't have when I was a kid, when I was 14, I was all about getting everybody to vote. I was, believe it or not, I was pro Bill Clinton. Okay. When I was 14, I was all about get out the vote. And I thought, what kind of horrible human being isn't involved in the civil process? Why wouldn't you vote? It is your civic duty. Like, trust me, I drank the Kool-Aid 100%. The reason why I personally have given up on electoral politics is because what Graham said is 100% correct. This country, like, democracy is a sham. We don't actually vote. Hey, there's Nick. We're not actually voting on who we want. What they're doing is they're saying the oligarchs control everything, okay? And the oligarchs are essentially the corporations. It's money that makes this country run. And just like Graham said, it's like maybe 1,000 people that are like billionaires that are the ones who make all the decisions. They're the ones who decide who you're allowed to pretend to make your leader. So if you think that you're actually voting If you think Biden became president because he was popular, I have oceanfront property in Arizona to sell you. Because that's not at all what happened. Okay. That's why Bernie never had a chance, ever. And if he did have a chance, there are only two things that could happen. If he actually did get in, he would either immediately pivot the way AOC has, or he would have been assassinated within his first 100 days. Those are the only two realities of Bernie Sanders getting elected. So that's what I mean by that. That's why I say I've given up on it. I'm not encouraging anyone else to not vote. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm personally saying that I'm focusing on the general strike because that's where I think we can actually get real change. And everybody can do, like, I have never not voted. I voted in this last election. I voted in 2016. But to me, that's not where my focus is. To me, the focus on actually creating change and getting things done. For Nick, it's the local level. For me, it's working on the general strike. That's the only way that I see that anything's going to happen. Because as you see, neolibs are fighting us every single step of the way. Republicans are not your enemy. Your enemy is the person who just wants to go back to brunch, because they're the ones stopping any kind of progress. They're the ones trying to trample out any movement to create real change, because change is uncomfortable. They don't want change. They want the status quo to stay as it is. That's why they didn't like Trump, because he threatened the status quo. They don't like that. So that's my response to that. I never told anybody not to vote, and I never would. I have campaigned heavily for people to vote all the way up until this very election. Like during the primaries, ask anybody who knows me. They were like, oh, great. She's going to talk about Bernie Sanders again, isn't she? Yes, I'm registered to vote.